Hey, Eldon back here again with another episode from Crazy Dad's Garage. You know what, I've been watching, I watch a lot of YouTube videos because I enjoy seeing what other guys are doing here. And one of the things that I'm finding that's really popular and that I actually like watching is old tool restoration videos. So I had something come into my hands the other day and I thought, well shoot, let's do one of these for a little mini episode of Crazy Dad's Garage. So we'll probably start a whole new series here of this type of stuff. When you're building cars and doing stuff like that, it's always nice to have a good selection of tools. Being a low buck thing like we're talking about on here all the time, most of us don't have money to run out and buy everything that we need or want. And so we don't always have the selection that we want. Well, I've got kind of an inside connection on some things, and it kind of is funny how everything works out in life. But I've got a brother that actually works at a landfill. And he's constantly telling me, man, you wouldn't believe the tool that I found today that somebody threw out. And apparently a lot of people will go and, like, Grandpa will die or something, and they'll go through his garage and they got to clean out all his stuff, and they've got a weekend to do it, and they'll just load a whole bunch of stuff that they don't know what to do with it. They don't know what it is. They'll load it up and they'll haul it up to the dump and get rid of it. And he's always coming up with some, to me, treasure that somebody dumped off out there, and it's been fun. I don't know, a couple things that I've gotten from him. Got a drill press, believe it or not, that was in really good condition, except somebody had dropped it and broken the big knuckle that holds the table on it off. And it's a nice big bench model drill press, but I was able to go online. I found that part for like 25 bucks. Ordered it. Took me an hour taking the thing apart, put it back together, and bingo, I had a drill press. And for nothing, I mean for the $25. And so for me that was pretty fun and exciting. He came up with a plasma cutter the other day that somebody hauled off up there. It was a Harbor Freight one. I haven't been able to, I don't know enough about them to know exactly all the parts I need, but I haven't found the parts that it's missing yet, but it's there. It's in pretty decent shape, so got a plasma cutter sitting around. I went over the other day to his house because he called me up and said, hey, I got this thing for you. Why don't you come get it? And when I pulled up, he was working on an old buffer that he had got, like a hand grinder thing. But it was an old Black & Decker one, the ones with the all-metal aluminum case on it. And he says, I think it's just got a bad cord in it. So he pulled the handle apart and was putting a new cord in it. And he's got, when you go into his shop, he's got a shop that's actually smaller than my little two-car garage shop here, and probably a third of the stuff he's got in there are tools that he's rescued from the landfill, and it's kind of fun. So anyway, the other day he called me up and he says, hey, do you need an engine stand? I'm like, I got one. I don't really need one. In fact, in this last move that I had, I picked up a second one because it was at a yard sale. I think I paid 10 bucks for it or whatever. And I just sold it because I'm like, I've got one. I don't need another place to, or don't have a place to store another one. But so I sold it in my own yard sale. But when he called me up and says, hey, do you need an engine stand? I'm like, well, no, but I need a free tool. And so I stopped by the other day and to see what he had. And that's what I'm going to do our tool restoration video on today. And so I'll show you here what he's got, and we'll start walking through this process and just kind of have a fun little video here for you. So I hope you enjoy it. It's fun. It's cool to pick up free tools. The other thing, we may do something on making a tool, because I do that quite a bit here. I'll find something that I don't know how to make happen with the tools that I've got, and I'll actually have to create something, and you'll probably do the same thing. But I think I'll throw in a series, we'll do these ever so often, and everybody will get a chance to see them. And it's just kind of one of those fun things. So this engine stand that I've got, it's actually missing a few parts, some bolts and some things like that. But we're going to walk through cleaning it up, making it nice, and having a nice usable tool here that was essentially free. So here we go. I'll switch over to turning the camera around and we'll start there. So here it is. Here's what he gave me. I suspect that this is a Harbor Freight model. It's one of the lightweight ones. I think you could put a small block V8 on it. I don't, and maybe a big block, but definitely a little 4-cylinder and V6 stuff. But these were the parts that he gave me, and as you can see, it's got paint splattered all over it and grease and stuff like that. And it had these pieces here, which are the main pieces. What it was missing was the simple parts. It was missing, there's a bolt that goes in right here that goes through the roller legs and bolts them to the upright piece, and so that bolt's missing. There's also a bolt that goes through here in this tube that holds the triangulated leg out there. So those kind of things are simple. They were missing. And on the head here, there's usually a great big 1/2-inch pipe that goes through here that you can use as a handle to rotate the thing around. And there's also a pin that drops down through these holes to allow you to turn the engine from one side to the other. So all of those things are ultra simple things. I'll get the bolts out of my bolt collection. The pipe I've got, I'm sure, in my pipe collection. And the pin, I'll probably just rig up a bolt that I can use for that, because it doesn't require anything more than that. Just something that drops in the hole and keeps it from rotating. So we'll do that. The biggest thing that we're going to have to do is one of the 4, I don't even know what you call them, but these ears that the engine, that actually bolt to the engine, one of them was missing. And so that's going to be the one little piece of fabrication I've got to do. I've got some pipe for the tube. I've got some metal here, although it's not as thick as this is. So what I'm going to do is cut 2 pieces of it and weld them together along a seam so that I've got something that's at least as strong. It'll actually be thicker than this, so I'll compensate by cutting my pipe thinner or shorter. But we'll fab that up and clean this puppy up, get her painted, and have myself a nice brand new free tool. That'll be the fun of it. So I gathered up, actually, here's the pieces that I'm probably going to need to fab stuff up. I've got the silver pipe there will make me a nice long handle that I've got some leverage on. You'll notice it's threaded on this end. It's already got a fitting on it, and it's got one on the other end, or threads on the other end. If I was going to spend any money on this thing, I would go buy myself a couple of pipe caps to put on there to use to hold this thing in place. But hey, this is Crazy Dad's Garage, low buck. I looked through my pipe collection. I don't have any pipe caps. But I did have this, which is the right size, and I'll just screw it on the end to hold things in place after I take the other fittings out of it. Because it's really got to be something that can come off and on anyway, because you have to take that handle out every once in a while. Got another piece of pipe here that I can use for the little spacer piece here on my ear. And then I've got this flat stock, which is the right width this way, but is too thin. It's not as thin as I thought it was, but anyway, it's too thin compared to what's already on here. So I'm just going to cut 2 pieces out of this, double it up, weld them together, and get my holes drilled in them. So there you go. All that stuff has come out of my collection of stuff. That or my brother's collection. We snagged a couple things from him, and literally this thing's going to be a freebie. So there you go. We're going to launch into it, and first thing I'm going to do is get myself some lacquer thinner and clean off all this grody paint overspray that somebody's got on it. Somebody obviously didn't care what happened to it or how it looked, and I don't really either, but hey, that's part of the tool restoration video process, right? So we'll get that cleaned off some lacquer thinner. I'll start fabbing up these parts, and we'll kind of show you as we go along what we're doing, and bring you back in here, and in an hour or two we'll have ourselves a nice new usable free engine stand. That's exciting to me. Here we go, just starting in on the cleaning process with some plain old lacquer thinner here. I think it appears that this orange on here as powder coat, which is nice so the lacquer thinner doesn't cut through it and break it off. So I'm just wiping that down good with some lacquer thinner, and it takes a little elbow grease, and more than that, it really takes time for the lacquer thinner to actually dissolve that old black paint that's on there. But you can see it's coming off pretty nicely. We don't have to do a ton of scrubbing, don't have to get any tools out, just this old cloth, and looks like it's going to come off alright. So that's the process for this step. Obviously I could bore you to tears, I could tell you stories about how my dog died this week or whatever while I do this, but I'm not going to insult your intelligence that way. I'm going to go through and clean this up and show you what I've got after I get done with it. And I'll be back with the next step of what we're going to do. And there you go. Thanks. A little bit of lacquer thinner and some elbow grease, and voila, look at this. Now I have a nice pretty orange part with no black drippy overspray on it. And this was kind of a bonus that came out of that. The label actually cleaned up. I was afraid there would be like these and the lacquer thinner would take all the printing off of it, but there we go. As you can see, this engine stand has a 750-pound capacity, which that is plenty big for any small block V8, and most big blocks are going to weigh under that. So it's a decent sized engine stand that could be used for just about anything I want to use it for. So that's the next step here. I'm going to go through that. Probably took me about 15 minutes to clean that up, and I think that's the worst part of the whole thing. So now I'll come over and clean up the two legs, and we'll start piecing this baby back together. Okay, so I threw in a few still shots here of what the legs look like now that they're all cleaned up, and sorting through my bolt collection to find the bolts that I needed. Didn't want to bore you with all of that process. And then right after this I'm going to follow up with some still shots of the process of cutting out the bars and fabbing up that one last ear, that mounting ear that goes on there. So you'll see that, and then we'll be on to the next part of the video. Yeah, so this time I got all that fabbed up. Sorry about trying to get the background light here where it's not shining in everybody's eyes, but got all those parts fabbed up, and we're going to end this video right here because we'll need a part 2 on this one. It ended up taking more than my 15 minutes that I've got allotted by YouTube to put these videos together. So we're going to have a part 2. So go find it. Should be a link to it here close by, and follow through as we assemble the thing, put it back together, and you get to see my nice free engine stand.